DawgNation's exclusive postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners, R.S. Andrews, Marlowe's Tavern, Georgia Farm Bureau, Royal Caribbean, and by the Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys. The 7-6 Apparel Company, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Georgia, Discover Dunwoody, and by Kroger. Go for 2 in 22 from DawgNation. Here's Brandon Adams.
Go for 2 in 22 special event. We're live here in Los Angeles the night before the national championship game, which takes place tomorrow, obviously between Georgia and TCU. And we've kind of reached that moment that we were at a year ago. We kind of got together at this time and we shared our thoughts on what exactly would mean for Georgia to win a national championship. And tonight, we're going to invite you to do the same thing again. It's dark where you are if you're in Georgia, but here in California, we're still in the middle of the afternoon, or at least heading towards the late afternoon. But wherever we are today, all across this great country, or around the world even, Georgia fans going to be invited to whichever video platform you're watching on. Click that video link, to join this conversation, and we'll take your calls the same way we do on our Dog Nation post-game show, and we have all year long, the same way we did almost exactly a year ago. We talked about the significance, the poignance of the moment with Georgia trying to win that first national championship. Well, here we are now with Georgia trying to win a second national championship. And I think the conversation in some respects may be the same as it's been in the past. In other ways, maybe it's unlike anything we've ever discussed before. Of course, my name is Brandon Adams, and it's been a great pleasure to be with you throughout this entirety of the Go for 2 in 22 season. It's been so thrilling to see so many folks here in L.A. showing those two fingers in the air, or the folks on social media, especially Twitter, using the hashtag Go for 2 in 22. It's just been such a fun thing to see the way in which all of this has grown here over the course of the last year. The excitement of what it is we all get a chance to experience here on Monday, and the thrilling part of that. So tonight, you're used to hearing me talk, but I'm going to give you a chance to do a lot of the talking here. I want to allow you to join the show and share what you think about how this would play out and what it would mean for you. And I'm curious, obviously, of your feelings on that. And I guess, by way of getting things started, I think the one thing that I can't quite move past is the idea that for such a long time, Georgia was the program that would be trying to topple a giant, that would try to conquer an empire. And yet, if Georgia to win this national championship tomorrow night, I think it'd be safe to say that Georgia's actually in college football kind of become the empire. They have become the reigning power. And for those of us who've been around for a while, that is quite a transition that would have taken place. So I'll share my thoughts throughout the evening, but as we said before, tonight's a night for you to share your thoughts. So if you're on Facebook, YouTube, DawgNation.com, however you're watching the show, there's a link for you to click into, and you can call us and discuss it live with us here this evening, including Richard Page, who's first up here tonight on Go for 2 in 22. Richard, if you want to, you can turn on your camera, and you can join us here live and share your thoughts. How about them Dogs, Richard? Let me begin with this. What would a national championship mean for you if Georgia's able to come out and win it one more time?
Well, it was a huge deal for me because I was in college in 1980 and was able to follow Herschel Walker and Vince Dooley and the entire Georgia team and saw them win the national championship. So it was absolutely an amazing experience. The very thought of being able to do going for 2 in 22 sends me through the roof.
How do you feel about the game, Richard? How do you think it's going to play out tomorrow?
Well, I think Georgia needs to play much better. Kirby said it very well. They've got to play much better than they did starting off the game against TCU. You don't want to let them get a chance to get some momentum. They're a good team. I think Georgia has better athletes. And I think Georgia, if they play their game, I think they can take TCU, but they've got to play their game. They got to play much better than they played against Ohio State. Particularly, they've got to play a better first and third quarters. Those two quarters really had me worried for that game.
Richard, I think it's a great call, and I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. I think you bring up a lot of really good points. First of all, fast start at the beginning of the game, fast start in the third quarter is a really important thing. And part of me wonders, when it came to the offensive game plan that Georgia showed in the third quarter, beginning of the second half against Ohio State last week, how much of that might have been related to what Ohio State was doing offensively and maybe Georgia, as it likes to say, playing that complementary football, trying to neutralize the Ohio State offense, keep them on the sideline, and maybe for a while Georgia kind of got into a rhythm that really wasn't its game. It was run, run, pass. It was that, not the textbook creativity and the trademark creativity we've seen from Todd Monken so much. The third quarter for Georgia offensively was a little bit weird, and maybe the way in which the Buckeyes were playing offensively, that might have been dictating how Georgia was playing that. But I talked to Todd Monken this week. In fact, you can see that interview on the Dog Nation video channels, including YouTube from yesterday, and I asked him, hey, as an offensive coordinator, do you like winning games 42-41? Todd Monken said, no, I don't. He probably said it actually even a little bit more colorful than that. So, Richard, I think your point's overall well taken, which is, what Georgia has done to win its last two games may not quite be the kind of name brand version of Georgia that we've seen for most of this season. But if you want tomorrow night to be the easiest path to victory, then Georgia coming out, asserting itself, showing itself to be the physically stronger team, and then maybe coasting to a little bit easier victory. I don't know that our hearts can take much more of what we got last week, but obviously Dog Nation will be up for whatever comes your way there on that. And by the way, the same way that Richard joined the show, you can do that too. Click the link, whichever video chat you're watching in, and you can be a part of this show here right now. In fact, next up on this Go for 2 and 22 special event is Kevin Click. Kevin, thanks for being here. Go Dogs and Go for 2 and 22. How you feeling tonight, Kevin?
Feeling great, man. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Gonna roll.
Absolutely. What would it mean for you if Georgia could come back here and win a national championship 2 years in a row? How amazing that would be, and what would that mean for you, Kevin?
I was in school back in the 80s during the Herschel years, and having the one championship and playing for it a couple other years, just spectacular. And it feels so great to be back in that position again, feeling like we're on a roll.
And as far as the game itself goes, we just heard, hey, maybe a little bit of a return to typical Georgia football, not quite so much what we saw in that game against Ohio State. Do you have a sense and a feel yet for how you think this game's going to play out?
Well, I hope we're a little more consistent on offense. And the defense, they got burned a few times. So got to shore a few things up. But I'm hoping the boys look at the tape real close, and they've got some tricks up their sleeves, and I'm excited.
Kevin, where will you be watching tomorrow?
I'll be at home in Asheville, North Carolina.
Well, listen, that sounds like a wonderful place to watch the game, so I hope you enjoy it. See these dogs go for 2 and 22, and best of luck to everybody in Dog Nation as they get ready to gather in and be a part of all this. So, Kevin, thanks for calling us and being a part of the show here this evening. As I said before, we'll continue to take your calls, and I think that Kevin brings up a good point there about the Georgia defense, and I think this defense would probably say this if the coaches and players were standing here. In fact, we've heard them say this a bit. They want to come out and show they're better than what they demonstrated, maybe second half of the game against LSU. You could write that off and say at that point the game didn't really matter anymore. The die had been kind of cast. Georgia was obviously going to coast to an easy victory, just simply a matter of how easy it was going to be. At that point, LSU started having some success, what we might call garbage time. Well, if that was true for the SEC championship, as you know, that was not true in the college football playoff, in the Peach Bowl. Ohio State gave Georgia everything it wanted, and Georgia needed every single one of its 42 points as a way of winning that game because of how successful the Buckeyes were moving the football. Well, listen, over the course of the last 2 years, we've seen this Georgia defense be the real catalyst for already a national championship team, and a catalyst that has kind of got Georgia on the doorstep of maybe being able to do this again. So in addition to the ideal, of course, you just want to win any way you can, I think this Georgia defense especially has the mindset that they want to go out and send a message and remind folks of what they are all about as they finish their season one way or another tomorrow night. I think this Georgia defense wants to finish it off on a very high note. We're Go for 2 and 22 tonight. We've got a great collection of sponsors who've made it all possible. We've also got some great phone calls that we continue to take here there as well, including next up our buddy Randy Tifton. Randy, thanks for being here on the Go for 2 and 22 special event tonight. Randy, how you doing and how you feeling about these dogs?
I tell you what, yeah, I'm so excited I can't sleep tonight. I've been thinking about it all day. But I just want you to know all these Alabama fans that's hating on us today. They're so jealous. So, usually I don't fuss with people, but I'm telling them, quit living in the past. Y'all in the back seat. Georgia's in the front seat. We driving the show now, not y'all. Quit crying. Sit back tomorrow night and watch the real team go back to back. I love it.
Randy, I love it too. There's nothing better than thinking about that bunch having to sit here and watch this thing on television while we all celebrate and enjoy ourselves and have a good time. It's about time these tables have turned, and they have turned in a mighty way, have they not?
Yes, they have, BA, because just like at that Pittsburgh Steelers game today, he run over there, tell them, take the Georgia flag down. And people's bragging about it. Who cares? Georgia's going back to back, and it's going to be a great night tomorrow night. I'm going to a Georgia party, and we're going to leave that night happy, just like when I talked to you after the Tennessee game. I probably won't be able to talk tomorrow night, but it's okay because I ain't got to work Tuesday. So it's on all night long.
I love that. I love that, Randy. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself, and certainly appreciate your phone call, and I love your enthusiasm about this team. And listen, Randy's one of the lucky ones. I wonder actually how much a Dog Nation can say, hey, I got that day off on Tuesday, because for those that don't, whether you be kids going to school or whether you be adults having to get up and go to work, there are going to be a lot of bleary-eyed folks, a lot of tired folks kind of rolling their way into a busy Tuesday. So hopefully you get a chance to enjoy a little bit of time off and enjoy some of that. It certainly sounds like Randy does that, and that's fun to consider. It's Go for 2 and 22 here tonight. We're taking your calls and having a great time. Obviously, Georgia fans weighing in about what the national championship would mean to them, what it's going to take to get this done, and the idea that we sat hoping for the possibility of this occurring last year, and then it did. And here we are a year later at a time in which a lot of folks thought it couldn't be done. A lot of folks told us it couldn't be done. And yet here is Georgia one more time with a chance to do this with the excitement that obviously builds around all of that. So Georgia fans weighing in tonight. We're having a great time with that, including Nick. You're next up here. Go for 2 in 22. National championship tomorrow night. Nick, what's on your mind?
Man, I'm pretty fired up. You know, the first thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say, and I'm sure you're like me, that you probably deflect celebrations sometimes. But, man, very thankful for you guys. Very thankful for the contact that you bring us. You, Jeff, Mike, Connor, all those dudes, seriously, not a lot of programs get what we get through Dog Nation. So, seriously, very thankful for you all, and fired up to go for 2. Let's get it done, man.
I love it. How do you think this game's going to play out tomorrow, Nick? First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. That means the world to me. You have no idea how much that means. I truly, truly, truly am eternally grateful for folks like you who allow us to be a part of this. That just means so much to me, and I know we're all excited about the game tomorrow. So with that in mind, how do you think it plays out?
Man, I think it's going to come down to two things. I think us taking care of the ball. I think turnovers have been a big thing. You know, the one kind of thorn in the side, you know, you kind of look back at some of the games where it's been close. Turnovers have always been the thing with that. So I think taking care of it, not getting too cute, taking care of Max Duggan and finding a way to get him contained and get him off his feet. And then I think I'm like you. I believe that I prefer a game that goes like 27-14, 27-13. You know, I would like to see that score a little bit lower and put them in the pressure cooker and let it be done there and take the air out of the ball. At least that's what I would like to see.
Nick, it's a great phone call. I appreciate it. And, yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I love the idea of more of a, like you said, 27-13, 31-17, 37-13, something along those lines. I like the idea of that more so than one of these games where you end up with a lot of possessions, you end up with a lot of points. And I think one of the real misnomers about that Peach Bowl was because obviously Georgia spent most of that game not really in control. I think there was this assumption that somehow maybe Ohio State did have control of the game. But I think what we kind of found out is because Ohio State could not hold on to the lead, eventually lost the game, is that when you have almost 100 combined points, it almost sort of feels like no one has control of the game, and it's like a greased pig or some sort of, you know, elusive thing that no one can really get a hold on and get a stranglehold on. And obviously Georgia loves the idea of asserting itself and putting that grip, that iron tight grip onto a football game. And that's so much of the way in which Georgia got back to this college football playoff. And obviously that seems like a great way to try to bring this one home tomorrow. And I'll also say this very quickly there as well. As Nick said, or as I was saying in response to what Nick had said, y'all, I feel like the luckiest person in the world. Can you imagine what it must be like to be able to talk about Georgia football at a time in which Georgia is winning at the rate that it is right now? And I'm telling you, I feel that way whether they win tomorrow night or not. I do believe they will, and I certainly, goodness knows, I hope that they do. but we are living through such a fun, special time. And, we could be either too old or too young and not quite be in the right place to be able to enjoy this, but somehow, some way, we're kind of at the right age to be able to really soak all this up. And many of you have traveled here to L.A. and you're watching us from your hotel room or something like that. Others of you, as folks have said tonight, you've got family and friends coming over to watch this game. This is the really special stuff. And to be able to be, a part of Dog Nation and something we take very seriously as a responsibility to kind of, as I always say, narrate this experience, right? To talk about, what Georgia's doing and try to show you some of the sights and sounds here and give you our thoughts on that, and to really kind of, not be me talking to you, but us talking with each other, kind of create that community. That's really what all of this has kind of hopefully always been about. And as we're on the doorstep of another national championship opportunity tomorrow, I find myself thinking about that there again. I feel really, really blessed to be part of this community and in conversation and in relationship with so many of you, where we just get a chance to enjoy this. I think it's really, really a great thing. So, Nick, I appreciate that. And we'll take more of your calls. If you're watching Facebook or YouTube or at DawgNation.com, you can click the link, you can be a part of the show, and you can share what's on your mind as Georgia gets ready to do this. We'll also try to read some of our traditional comments here, as well as Dog fans are kind of weighing in and kind of typing their comments and getting ready to do that. We can talk about some of the stuff that's happened today there, too. Obviously, we've been watching Darnell Washington's situation very closely. Darnell's a very important player for Georgia. Not to say that Georgia can't win without him, but this is pretty clearly a player of importance for Georgia, and yet the sense that you get is, hey, maybe a little bit banged up, a little bit hobbled. I had a lot of Dog fans who saw the video that I put out of him walking to the bus after getting off the airplane when they arrived here on Friday, saying, well, there's no walking, boo, but it certainly seems like he's walking a little slowly, a little gingerly. Maybe that was indeed the case. Kirby Smart's obviously not revealing much. I talked to Darnell Washington and Todd Hartley both directly yesterday, and neither one of them obviously wanted to reveal the secret there on that too. But ultimately, I think this is a situation where Darnell's going to try to give it a go. He's going to play as much as he can, and yet we probably still end up seeing a good bit of a guy like Oscar Delp in this game, because I do believe those two tight end sets are going to be really important for Georgia, just because of the way in which TCU is likely to try to attack them defensively. It's Go for 2 and 22 tonight. Our next call is Rob Shore. Rob, you're next here on Dog Nation tonight. Hope you're enjoying this evening, getting ready for the national championship tomorrow. How about them Dogs? How do you feel about Go for 2 and 22 here?
Really excited about that option, BA, because as I'll reiterate from the previous caller, is that you and Dog Nation have really got us excited about this. You able to hear me, BA? I can't hear you in response.
I am. Yeah, I sure can. I can hear you. I can hear you
Okay.
just fine. Everybody can hear you. Thank you so much.
Good. Yeah, I want to reiterate that because you guys keep us informed. You and Jeff and Connor keep us, engaged all season long. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting for me because I was able to watch Kirby play when he was at Georgia. And so it's a full circle to see him develop the players that we fall in love with, see him build the character that we all fall in love with, and then to have the kind of wins and seasons that he's built is just exciting for all of us Dog fans.
So you've been obviously watching Georgia chase a national championship all these years. They got it last year. Now they're right back here again. What would it mean for you to see Georgia go for 2 and 22 and bring home a second national championship under Kirby Smart? As you said, he's an alumnus of the program. He's as deeply entrenched as UGA can be, and he could also very quickly become one of the most prolific winners in recent college football history. What would that mean for you if it happened?
Personally, a lot of pride, knowing that an alum from the university and seeing how he's led this team and how they have rallied for each other. That's exciting as Dog alum to see. This is the kind of the individuals and people that Kirby is building, and it gets excited. Also, recognizing that Kirby is starting to set a standard that, is recognized nationally for why Georgia football and the university should be recognized. And I think he's done a wonderful job. The energy he puts into it and how he builds individuals is really exciting.
How about the game itself? How do you expect it to play out tomorrow?
Oh, I think you and I see a lot of the same similarities in how we want this to go, and that's the trenches. Is thinking about how to control their run game and make sure that they have to rely completely on the pass and contain a very mobile quarterback and force him to be stressed the entire time throwing the ball. He's a good thrower, but if we make that all of his game, I think we have a better chance for that secondary to start keying in on where he's going.
I love it, Rob. Thanks for the phone call. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate those kind words. It means so much to me. It really does. And one of the great things I got a chance to do already this weekend being here, you meet some people face to face, or we have these digital conversations. We're able to talk back and forth. Technology has advanced to the point where, we can sort of have this two-way conversation now in a way that used to be pretty difficult to do on a streaming internet show like this, but all of a sudden now it's gotten a little easier. And so it makes what I get to do really, really fun to be able to do all of that. And it's interesting to hear Rob echo what some others have said. Obviously, what I've said is that we know that Georgia's the bigger team. You can just visually look and see that. You can read the roster pages and notice that. We know that Georgia's the bigger team. We're led to believe they also can be the more physical team. That's what Michigan was supposed to be as well in the Fiesta Bowl, and obviously they didn't work out too well for the Wolverines. I think we saw Georgia handle Michigan last year, so maybe that gives some Georgia fans some confidence to say what Michigan failed to do, assert itself physically, dominate in the trenches, as Rob said. What Michigan failed to do, Georgia can still do, because Georgia has just been so much more adept at being able to do that. Rob, I think that's really well said. And as I said before, really, really appreciate those kind words. You will never know how impactful that is for me. And on behalf of Connor and Jeff and Mike and all the other guys from Dog Nation, I know if they were here, they'd echo those same sentiments. It is an awesome, awesome privilege to be able to talk to all of you and deliver this content, especially in light of what's about to happen tomorrow. We're in L.A. We're playing. I mean, I'll invite you to check out the interview that I did with Brian McClendon, because yesterday I kind of just said that to McClendon, because he's obviously much like Kirby, a Georgia grad and a guy who's been a part of this program. And at one point in time, I just sort of said, can you believe where we are? We're in L.A., about to play for national championship. Well, not we. I'm not playing in the game, but the idea that that's where Dog Nation is right now, and it's awe-inspiring. It's really fantastic, really fantastic indeed. So
get in here.
More of your calls here coming up, including next John David. John David, you're next up here on Go for Two and 22. John, are you there? Actually, let's go to Steven. Steven, you're next up here on Go for Two and 22. Steven, how about them Dogs? How you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling great. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing really well, Steven. Thank you for asking. Really, really well. I can hear you great. Hear you perfectly.
I mean, I'm excited because I got my Dog Nation champion mug here. I got this sweatshirt that hasn't been washed since Indianapolis. I've got my dog pants on, as you call them, britches. I got them on. And some will say to me, Steve, that's a little bit early at 6:26 Eastern time to have your pajamas on. I say balderdash. I'm excited for this game. And I'll tell you a story. And by the way, my dad is here lurking in the background. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, guys.
Hello. So,
hello, sir.
How great what you do, Brandon, what everybody does, and how I was so close to going to Rutgers. Because I tell you, when I moved to LA, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know one person. I was miserable. I wasn't living in my car quite yet, but it was pretty miserable. And then I walked into the SoCal Bulldogs Alumni Network, and everyone there was so nice to me, and it was such a great place to watch the game. And my friend Chris, who I hope is listening, is at the game in LA. I went to the Peach Bowl with him, and I made some of the best friends of my life at the Alumni Club in Westwood.
Wonderful.
In LA. So we're pretty excited.
Steve, that's awesome to hear. How do you feel like this game's going to go?
I think that we're going to win in the trenches, as you guys were saying. I'm a little concerned about we rewatched the Ohio State game, and when the game on the line, it seems like the opposing offensive coordinators are going right for Kelee. I don't want to call them out. I know you don't usually do that on the show, but that slant, we're just not defending that slant over the middle very well. But again, they're more of a running team with a split quarterback, so I think that favors us. I'm thinking we win like the Tennessee game, like a 27-13 in a game that's not actually that close, or as Matt Rukavina and Phillip Jordan Wells would say, it's going to be more of a Godfather 2 kind of sequel and less of a Caddyshack 2 kind of sequel. What do you like, Dad?
Steve, that's so good.
I like the Dogs.
Dad, you like the Dogs?
I like the Dogs.
How do you spell that, Dad?
DAWGS. Dogs.
I love it. I love it.
Brandon.
I love it.
Have a great
good
time
stuff.
out there.
Steve, thank you so much, Steve and Mr. Sfinney. Really, really good stuff. Steve Sfinney's been a long-time commenter of ours on Facebook for a long time, and it's kind of fun, like I said before, some of the stuff we get to do. You see some of these faces, you hear some of the voices of names you may have seen in the comment section for a long time, and we do have some very pop cultural savant types in the in our Facebook comment section referencing the sequels. Godfather 2, one of the great sequels of all time. Caddyshack 2, not so great. But tomorrow, if Georgia's able to come out and win this one again, it would be an all-time sequel right here in the shadow of Hollywood, a town that knows something about those blockbuster sequels. Go for 2 in 22 certainly has the look and the feel of all of that. So, man, we're excited. We're looking forward to it, and it's great to hear Steve weighing in and so many Dog fans having a great time there on that. We're going to take more of your calls, I promise. If you're on hold, stay where you are. And if you haven't joined us yet, click in there, be a part of it, and we'll get it going. But we're also going to say thanks. I couldn't be in LA, and I couldn't be talking to you right now if not for a great team of sponsors who's made it possible all month long, over the course of these last few weeks. Go for 2 in 22. We've had a great collection of sponsors. In fact, if you don't mind, for just a couple of seconds, let me pause and say thanks to some of them, and then we'll come back and take a lot more of your phone calls here as we're live in LA, getting ready for the national championship tomorrow night on Go for 2 in 22.
DawgNation's postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners, including
the Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys. Because Atlanta happens from out of nowhere. When the unexpected happens to you, visit atlantahappens.com.
the 7-6 Apparel Company, the perfect holiday gifts for the hard-to-find person in your family. Visit the76.com to start shopping today.
And Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Georgia. The best time for new beginnings is now. Forever moving you. Visit bhhsgeorgia.com to start your search today. And now, back to the show.
And as I said before, thank you so much to those great sponsors who made all this possible. Let me say one thing real quick, and then we're right back to the phones. Steve brought up the idea of Kelee Ringo. There's no doubt that Kelee Ringo's not had his best football at times over the course of these last couple of games. I also think at times maybe he's played better than he's been given credit for, but Ringo has been thrown at. At times he's kind of given up some big plays. We'll acknowledge that. And yet I do believe on Monday, for a couple of reasons, Georgia may be very glad that it has Kelee Ringo. Obviously, we're right back on a national championship stage that Ringo thrived in a year ago, became a part of Georgia's football history with the interception return for a touchdown against Bryce Young. But also, when you think about Johnston, the big receiver for TCU, size is going to matter in that battle with the secondary and the wide receivers. And Kelee's size, long arms, big frame, a guy that runs very well at that big body frame. I think that Kelee Ringo could have a big role in this game because of that on Monday. So just kind of keep that in mind as we look ahead to how it's going to play out between the Dogs and the Horned Frogs. Jeff, you're next up here on Go for 2 in 22. Jeff, how about them Dogs? Are you excited about a chance to see Georgia win another national championship tomorrow night? Jeff, are you with me? Jeff, you're muted, so if you want to unmute yourself, everybody around Dog Nation will be able to hear you. So go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can get going here.
Hey, B.A. Glad to
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Glad I could meet you in the Oregon game. First game of the season. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the Dogs stomp some TCU frog legs tomorrow. I'm excited to watch them play.
Absolutely. How do you think the game's going to play out, Jeff?
I think it's going to be a lot closer game than a lot of people think. I think Georgia's probably going to pull it out, probably 40-20.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate the phone call. Thanks for being here. When you say a lot closer game than people are maybe anticipating, I know those extra butterflies start to come up my stomach here because I think a lot of us lived through a wild game against Ohio State, 42-41. So obviously we know what it feels like to kind of be on the edge of your seat. Georgia didn't have a lot of those this season, hasn't had a lot of those over the last couple of seasons, but certainly we got more than we would have probably bargained for against Ohio State. So I guess Dog Nation will be on guard for the idea this could be one of those kinds of games again. But I appreciate your phone call. And I appreciate you being a part of this, and it was great to meet you earlier in the season and great to be able to talk to you here tonight on what we're doing. Go for 2 in 22 as we look ahead to Georgia and TCU on Monday night, and you heard the call there from him, 40-20. It's one of the things we talked about. We did a Go for 2 in 22 video show a little earlier today. We talked about this, that if you pay attention to the experts, the odds makers, things like that, they are expecting slightly over 60 total points scored in this game. And, there were nearly, 90 total points scored, slightly less than that, but more than 80, approaching 85, 90 points in that game last week against Ohio State. And I think the more the game pushes towards a combined point total that gets close to 60 or in excess of 60, I think the more it does bring TCU into this game. I think if Georgia dominates, now listen, Georgia can still score a lot of points, but the more total points that are scored, the more you kind of approach that sort of 60 number. We saw 80 combined points in the SEC championship. That didn't quite feel like Georgia football. We saw 85 combined points in the Peach Bowl. That didn't quite feel like Georgia football. I think Georgia football at its best is a game in which the defense gets a big performance. You got to get after, as people have said, you got to get after Max Duggan with the pass rush. But something a little more in the neighborhood of that, in the neighborhood of that sort of 40-ish, 50-ish range in terms of total points probably makes a little bit more sense for Georgia in a situation like that. The great Matt Rukavina also joins us here now on Go for 2 in 22. Matt's kind of about halfway between where I am in L.A. and where many of y'all are there in Georgia, in the state of Texas. So he joins us here tonight. Matt, good to have you with us, and how excited are you about what's going to happen tomorrow?
That's right. I'm holding the fort down here in Texas, PA. Not too many horny toad fans around here. It's still kind of Texas A&M country, but doing my best to hold it down with all the Match Pack fans trying to get their cashing in. But real quick, before I get further, the great Steve Schaffini, I have to throw him I have to give him a throw it back. That kind sir, he is the real Hollywood, because he was in, I don't know if anyone on the show knows it, he has a cameo at the end of this last episode of season 3 of Stranger Things. He is a communist soldier. Get him to you right there. So Steve, you are the true Hollywood, my man, while we've got everyone out there in Hollywood. But got to give him that shout back. But I was going to say, while I've got you here, I've got the Wall of Champions here at the house, starting with, we're just going to go right down the list. Our AJC, some of the great clips from the AJC last year, hoping to add to it this year. So, I remember it's so surreal that, we're already, it's been a year since we had this again. And I don't know if you remember, but speaking of pop culture references, we had this call a year ago, and I said, I made a Game of Thrones reference with Nick Saban and the Ramsey Bolton, the evil genius, as it were. And I said, it was so based on don't do what he wants to do, and don't get into his game, and all that kind of stuff, and don't play into his traps. And I feel like we don't really have to have that this year. I feel like this year it's a lot more play our game, play to our strengths, no turnovers. And I know we've had some other callers say this already, so I'm kind of echoing what they've said. But this feels a little bit more straightforward this year. Do what we're good at, stick to what we're good at, no turnovers, that's to stay within the game plan, as Kirby said it after the Peach Bowl. And I feel pretty good. I'm not going to make any prognostications about point totals because I'm not really good at that. But play our game. I feel good, and hopefully we'll be having this call tomorrow night, and I'll have maybe another Weller special reserve in hand. We can do it again.
I like it. I like it, Matt. Thanks for the call, and I appreciate you being here. And by the way, beautiful man cave down there. That was looking great. And it's great to see those AJC Dog Nation field editions and those commemorative. That's awesome stuff, Matt. Thanks for the call. I appreciate that. And listen, it's always great to have a good wife who kind of helps collect that stuff. Appreciate that, Matt. Thank you so much. It's great to have a good wife to help you collect that stuff. I know my wife's going to help me with that kind of stuff over the years, too, and it's just kind of nice to hold on to that. I'm a collector. I think sports fans just kind of are collectors. We kind of like holding on to things like that, and so that's nice to be able to see and fun to think about where all this is going to go on Monday. And as Matt said, I do think there's a really interesting narrative that's evolved this year compared to last year, in that last year you would have said, okay, you've got this arch nemesis. You've got Alabama, but Nick Saban in particular. You've got to be on guard for anything that he might bring to the table. And you've got to just be watching out for that, and you've got to be on guard for that. And yet, in this particular game, it's not so much about the nemesis of the opponent that you're playing, but just the understanding that 15-0 is just really hard to do. And Georgia could be playing TCU. They could be playing anybody on Monday night. And the idea of winning 15 consecutive games to close out this season, it's actually a much longer winning streak than that. It'd be 17 total games if Georgia could finish it off. But it's just the challenge of winning week in, week out, no matter who you're playing. That's really probably the biggest challenge as it relates to what's going to happen. But a very different scene knowing that you don't really have your arch nemesis, your longtime rival, Alabama, on the other side. It's Georgia competing against itself and competing against exactly how good this team can be and how high on the top shelf of college football history that it can be. So I think that's really well said, and terrific stuff, Matt. We appreciate you being here, and thanks for showing off some of what you got going on down there in that basement. How about Jack? You're next up here. Go for 2 in 22. Jack, tomorrow these Dogs may win a national championship. What would that mean to you, and how much fun are you having with this right now?
Hey, brother, listen, thank you for having me on. I'm going to keep it real with you. I'm at my local Mexican restaurant right now, and I hope the background noise is not too loud. But my mama called me, and she said, hey, you need to jump on BA, Dog Nation Live. So here I am. I just want to say go Dogs. Feeling fantastic about this week. Love what I'm hearing from Coach Kirby Smart and hearing from my Dogs. Got to tell you, wasn't super positive last week throughout the week, but this week's been a whole different story, and I'm looking forward to bringing that national championship home again to the Dog Nation, baby. And go Dogs from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
I love it, Matt. Thanks for being here, and go Dogs right back at you. And have a good time up there in Chattanooga watching this go down, and enjoy yourself some good food there tonight. Sounds like y'all are having a good time getting ready for this tomorrow, so I'm happy to be able to see that, and I appreciate you joining us here. And as you said, you like what you hear from Kirby Smart. I think you'd be proud of the way in which Kirby's led this team since they've been in Los Angeles. From the moment they got off the plane, getting on the bus, heading over towards practice, even some of the stuff with the yoga and stuff like that yesterday. Media day, we saw them, yesterday too. This is a team that's just pretty buttoned up and pretty professional right now. Now, they're not stiff and they're not, mannequins. They're loose and they're smiling. They're having a good time. But at the same time, they're on a mission here. And when you talk to those guys, I think you get the impression they understand what the stakes are. They know what they have a chance to do. And you got a couple of different motivational forces here. You've got guys, let's use Jamon Dumas-Johnson as an example of this. Jamon Dumas-Johnson's playing a lot more on this team right now than he would have a year ago. So in a lot of ways, I'm sure he probably feels like this year would be his national championship, where he was more of a guy watching guys like Nakobe Dean win that one a year ago. But you've also got guys who've now played on both these teams. For Christopher Smith, who came back, he saw a lot of his teammates a year ago. They moved on the NFL. They got paid. Christopher's going to get his chance to do that here this year. But by staying back and coming to college, Christopher Smith gets a chance to have 2 national championship rings, assuming that Georgia will win that game. And he understands, I believe, what his place in history would be. I know Kearis Jackson understands that. Every time we talk to Kearis, Kearis is very, very motivated by the chance to make history. That matters to me. I love the idea that, those of us who are a little bit older, maybe we kind of appreciate the history because we've just sort of lived through more of it. Some of these younger guys in their early 20s, they just haven't lived through much history. So maybe that would cause them to sort of only think about the present tense because that's all they really know. And yet guys like Kearis, he understands the phrase that he's kind of invented that we all like to use, putting those numbers on the wall. This team gets it. This team does. And, Matt, if you say you like what you've been hearing out of these Dogs, I think you would have really liked it here in L.A. over the course of the last couple of days, including this morning with Kirby Smart there as well. Zane joins us next here on Go for 2 in 22. You can tell that Zane's raising him right here. Got a little young one with him there too. So we love the idea of Dog Nation getting that next generation ready to cheer on this team. And who knows how many national championships they'll be chasing by the time these young ones come of age. But Zane, we appreciate you being here. Go for 2 in 22. How about them Dogs? How you feeling tonight, Zane?
Can you hear me, guys? Pretty good? Am I good?
I can hear you just fine, Zane. I can hear you just
Awesome,
fine.
Man. I've never felt better. To be honest, I felt last year I didn't get to enjoy it. I got so nerved up. I feel like after seeing them win it all last year, I got the chip off the back. So this year I'm really full on board and ready to see them go back to back, which is insane to think about. After all the years of seeing them come close but not quite hard enough, so I'm excited to see them win it. Let's win it for Vince, and go Dogs.
Zane, great call. I appreciate it. And I think you use an appropriate word here when you talk about how just insane it would be, how crazy it would be to think that Georgia could win a national championship again, back to back. It hasn't happened since 2011, 2012. It's never happened in the college football playoff era. This is, in a lot of ways, an unprecedented level of success, at least in this era that we're living in right now. And Georgia's obviously worked to earn this, and if they get it, it'll be deserving. And yet you still can't quite, I think, at least for me, and even though I talk for a living, it's almost like you can't quite describe just how amazing the experience would be to see Georgia do this in consecutive years if they are indeed able to get that done. So it's a great phone call, Zane. I appreciate you being here and being a part of that here tonight. And we'll keep taking your calls and lining you up. So if you're watching Facebook or DawgNation.com or YouTube, whatever comment section you're on, you'll get a chance to be a part of the show. And we'll get you on and let you talk here. We'll try to get you on and off as quick as we can because we have a lot of folks who are waiting and they want to be a part of this. And then don't forget, if you're enjoying what we're doing tonight, we'll do this again tomorrow night after the game. And oh, Lord, please let this be a good conversation. I think it's going to be. But please let this be a good, happy conversation. Much the same way last year in Indianapolis, we just reveled in the celebration. Hopefully we get a chance to do that tomorrow night, and your calls will be a big part of that. We do, including Phillip. You're next up here. Go for 2 and 22 tonight. Phillip, thanks for being here. How about them Dogs? How you feeling about a chance at national championship number 2 for this team tomorrow night?
I'm excited.
Phillip, go ahead. You're live.
Thrilled. I can't wait, brother. Dogs are going to win. Okay, we're going to make history. And that's all I got to say.
Hey, that's all that needs to be said, Phillip. I love it. Dogs are going to win, and they're going to make history. And that's the thing. And I think that word history matters to me in this sense because I think when you start thinking about, hey, who are in college football, there's a national champion every year. We understand that. But there are some national champions that kind of seemingly have a level of significance, a level of meaning that's just a little bit higher than the norm. We would say that LSU in 2019 probably had that. When people talk about the greatest teams in recent history, recent memory, a team like LSU gets mentioned prominently in that. They are not just a national champion. They're kind of viewed as a historic national champion, one of those teams that people just sort of remember. Well, guess what? If Georgia, after winning last year's national championship, were to follow that up by going 15-0, I think that Georgia would also get that sort of historic significance that's reserved for the very most special teams in the sport. And when you start thinking about, listen, people always want to say, well, is Georgia the new Alabama? Or that's just kind of a way of saying, is Georgia the new reigning dynasty in college football? And the honest truth is, if they win tomorrow, I think you would have to conclude that they probably are. But I would say the comparison goes beyond just what Alabama has been. I mean, obviously, that would be an apt comparison, but you also have to start thinking about, other dynasties in other sports. You follow professional sports. You think about the historic dynasties there. The idea of Kirby Smart, who's still very young, could he build the Georgia football program to be college football's version of what we maybe used to think about the New York Yankees as being in baseball? I'm here in L.A. what the Lakers have been in basketball. Right next to the SoFi Stadium is the old, I call it the Great Western Forum. It's called something else now, but that's the old building that Magic and Kareem and, those guys played in, and eventually Kobe and Shaq over at Staples Center. Could Kirby Smart build Georgia football into something like what the Lakers have been in the NBA, or Bill Belichick and the Patriots, or on and on you want to go? That it's more than about being just the next Alabama. It's about potentially making Georgia football with a coach who's got the stamina and the youth and the drive and the desire to succeed, making Georgia football into something that kind of resembles the greatest dynasties we've seen all across sports. So that is a lot of what could be at stake, and I think that history is a very interesting word to use there in that particular sense. Next up here on Go for 2 and 22 tonight, we'll say hello to Joseph Kennedy. Joseph, you're next up tonight. How about them Dogs? Georgia TCU tomorrow night. Joseph, what you think about it?
I think we're going to put a whooping on them, BA. Think we're going to shut their
boy.
run
I
game
hope so.
down. Yeah, we're gonna put a lot of pressure on that quarterback. As long as we can keep him from extending plays with his legs, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, Joseph, you got to be careful with that. Obviously, Duggan's proven himself to be a very effective runner. I mean, he's carrying the ball like 15 times a lot of these games. That's kind of like almost like a running back type number. So when you think about the most dominant potential weapons that TCU has, dug him with the ball in his hands and running with it, I'm not quite so sure that's not as effective as anything else they'll be able to do at all.
I hope that's true. But, they play that 3-3-5 defense. We got to be able to shake that thing. I mean, we started
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate the phone.
Against LSU, we got to keep that same kind of offense going against against
TCU on Monday. Joseph,
Yeah,
I appreciate the
TCU.
phone call. Thanks for being here, and I do think no problem at all, Joseph. You're doing great. Appreciate the phone call. Thanks for being with us. And he brings up the idea of the 3-3-5 defense, and I do think that on the one hand, we think, well, in a lot of ways that should play into Georgia's strength. Georgia puts the 2 tight ends in the game. You get those 7 big bodies across the line of scrimmage. TCU's going to have a hard time matching the manpower with Georgia with so many bodies in the line of scrimmage. But I think other people will tell you, well, hey, if TCU's got, only 3 down linemen, that means they're moving a lot of guys around, like chess pieces on the board. And that means for a lot of the offensive linemen, you may fire off the ball. You may be big. You may be burly. You may be ready to play put a big hit on somebody. But at the same time, because the way in which TCU moves around defensively, you also have to sort of look for somebody to hit. TCU's not going to just stand there and let you maul them. That's the issue that you kind of run into is, well, in a phone booth, in a small ring, well, of course, the Georgia guys are going to be able to kind of assert themselves physically. Well, TCU's not going to just stand there and let that happen. They're going to move around. They're going to try to use quickness. I told some of y'all on video throughout the day today, having been kind of embedded with that team for a minute yesterday, I was walking into the convention center where the media day was going to happen, and I just kind of stumbled right into like the TCU. I mean, I literally got carried with the huddle almost into the convention center. And you look around. I don't mean this disparagingly. I just mean it honestly. It's obvious the TCU is much, much smaller than Georgia. I mean, much smaller than Georgia. And so you're left to conclude, well, given the fact that if I know that, well, of course they know that about themselves. And so they're going to try to do something to neutralize the size, the strength advantage that maybe Georgia has, which means that when those offensive linemen do fire off the ball, they're going to have a hard time, at least if TCU has success, they're going to have a hard time finding out, where am I going? Who am I putting a block on here? Because obviously TCU is going to try to move around and see what they can do to create some havoc there. And that's why they kind of play that. It's one of those things that, it's a style of defense that really kind of works well in the Big 12. I'm sure it works very well, makes for an interesting combination and confrontation each day during TCU practice, because I think of TCU as sort of a classic Big 12 offense. I think of this defense as one that's been kind of designed to combat what a lot of those Big 12 offenses do, which is, you throw short, you try to, make some easy underneath type throws and see if the ball carrier or the receiver can get some yards after catch. And obviously that's what that 3-3-5, I think in a lot of ways have been kind of designed to try to stop. All right, back to our phones next up. It's Barry. Barry's got the Georgia sticker. Okay, so we lost that. Is it Stillman? Is it Stillman who's next up? Next year on our Go for 2 in 22 show. How are you? Welcome to the program. How you feel about these dogs tonight?
Hi, it's good to see you, BA. I listened to your show all the way home from Greenville, South Carolina today, and
thank you.
What you were talking about today with the blue chip ratio. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that was my go-to for the Tennessee game, and I think it's the same here. I think if you look at the ratio of TCU versus Michigan's ratio was 39%, which is so much lower than our 80%. So I think that'll be the biggest thing, and I just think it'll all come down in the fourth quarter.
Well, I tell you, I think that's a really interesting point that hopefully by the time that fourth quarter comes around, Georgia, who, as you said, measurably so much more talent over the course of a long 60-minute game before it's done, that talent really shows itself, and that Georgia does lean on that to kind of extend its lead and hopefully show some separation between Georgia and TCU. After all, that's what talent's supposed to do, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just
well, listen, I appreciate the call.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Sir. No, tomorrow night we'll be saying go for 3 in 23.
That's good stuff. I hope that's the case. I appreciate the call. Thanks for being here. And it is fun to think about how bright the future could be. Obviously, with Georgia trying to win a national championship now and looking ahead to next season and then seasons after that, where they once again expect to be contenders as well. I think that's really true. And to give you a little context for what he was also saying as well, this was on Friday's edition of Dog Nation Daily. There's a guy named Bud Elliott. He's an analyst, reporter type, who had kind of made a formula where he just looks at the number of former 4- and 5-star recruits on a roster. And his theory is, and it's been kind of proven over the years to be one of those really important lines of demarcation between who can and who can't win a national championship, the notion that you have more signees over the previous 4 years who are either 4- or 5-star prospects than not. That's what the blue chip ratio is. You have to be in excess of 50% on that. Well, Georgia's at about 80%, and TCU's well below that 50% number. Now, Bud has said eventually he believes there'll be a non-blue chip team win the national championship. There have been a couple of instances where it's almost happened, and maybe a team like TCU could kind of push the limits there on that. But what we said on the show, though, is, and I appreciate those of you who watch or listen to Dog Nation Daily. I really do appreciate that. What we said on the show, though, is that when you look about where that talent shows up, like where is the talent when it comes to this for Georgia? What we said is, you think about like net points per drive when you have the ball, when your opponent has the ball on those drives. How many points are you coming away with? How many points are you limiting them with to kind of create that sort of net comparison between the offense and the defense? And Georgia's in excess of more than 2 points per drive on the net, totaling offense and defense there together. TCU slightly below 1. So if you want to see, where does it show up for Georgia? Where does that talent show up? We know the recruiting names. We saw the star rankings when they came out of high school, but how does that show up on the field? That to me is an example of how that really kind of shows up on the field for Georgia. I think that's really good. All right, so we're going to get some more of your calls coming in. So if you want to join us, click the link, Facebook, YouTube, DawgNation.com. We got a little bit more time to take those calls. But first, before we do, for one more time, y'all, it's such a great experience to be here in LA, to be able to talk to you, to have the technology to do all of this, to think about where we started here with Dog Nation, to think that we're able to do this here right now. We could not do it without great sponsors. So for one more time here on Go for 2 in 22, let's take a moment to thank a few of them.
Dog Nation's postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners, including
Kroger. Visit Kroger for all your holiday needs and to stock up for bowl season.
R.S. Andrews, Dog Nation's choice for all your heating and air needs.
Marlowe's Tavern. Need a tasty gift this holiday season? Try a Marlowe's Tavern gift card. Visit marlowestavern.com. And now, back to the show.
Once again, thank you so much to great sponsors who made all this possible, and thanks to all of you who've made this so much fun. The build-up, the excitement, and the wait is almost over. Tomorrow is the national championship. Georgia and TCU. We're excited about that. We have about 5 more minutes if you want to jump in here and get some calls in. I'll also try to read some of your comments as well. I know some of you are traveling around. You're not able to pick up the phone and call us to join us via Zoom. If you want to, you've got some time to do that. If you want to read a couple of comments, we'll do that. I'll also tell you that tomorrow we're going to do a kind of a combination of a regular Monday and a game day. So we're going to be on video like 1,000 times tomorrow. We'll do Dog Nation Daily in the morning, kind of like we're doing it right now. We'll do game day stuff after that. We'll do the Kroger Kickoff pregame. We're going to obviously have a big post-game show on the field tomorrow. So full game day coverage, and really, as you might expect, even more of that for a national championship. And, of course, Dog Nation Daily in the morning. John Stinchcomb is going to be a part of that. So we've got some really, really fun stuff coming up. And obviously, for now, time for more of your calls there as well. So click that Zoom link, be a part of the show. Big Dog fan, a guy that's been watching this team for a long time, our buddy Eddie from Ackworth. Great legendary sports radio caller over the years, too. Eddie, thanks for being here on Go for 2 in 22 tonight. I appreciate that. I hope you're doing well. I know you're excited about this game coming up on Monday night.
Hey, Brandon, thank you for taking my call. First of all, as you can see, I'm wearing a 7-6 apparel right here. And below it, there's room. It's going to be 2022 starting tomorrow night. So there you go. There's your next shirt there, Stan. Brandon, I've been following you. I've been following you since you were doing a broadcast with Jeff Wolverton on 790 The Zone, if you remember that. I know you pretty well. I would call
Sure.
you after the games and lament the fact that Georgia blew yet another big game. Those days are over, Brandon. We're going to win back-to-back tomorrow night. And we spent 41 years in the desert trying to get here. Just think about that for a second. What an incredible time to be a Dogs fan.
It really is, Eddie. How do you think this game plays out tomorrow?
Well, Brandon, I really do believe that TCU got handed that game last week. I know they played really well and they made plays, but Stetson Bennett is not throwing 2 pick sixes. We're not going on the 1 yard line and not punching the ball in. That is not happening. This team is on a mission. Brandon, you guys interview and are as close to this team as anybody. This team is prepared. Kirby's not overlooking TCU. I think that's an asinine thing for the media to be saying. We're going to go out there and pound them, Brandon. I say 33-13, and we're all going to relax the whole night. Thank God, because my brain can't handle another close game. Go Dogs, sick 'em, woof, woof. Get it done.
I love it. I love it, Eddie. Thanks for being here. Great phone call. I really appreciate that. And Eddie's right. For years I was doing Atlanta Sports Radio, and a lot of you have kind of called in shows like that over the years. Eddie certainly has. And, back in that era when I was kind of first getting started in media, doing some things like that, the typical conversation, I hate to say this, but it just was true. It was about the heartache of how did Georgia let this game get away, or, what might could happen. There was always, you know what people used to say about Georgia over the years. I'll wait till next year, and the way in which Georgia fans would get mocked for that kind of eternal sense of hope that was never quite fulfilled. We all know what that was like, and a lot of us lived through all of that. Well, guess what? That's just, what is it? They say the past just prologue. Like, that's just the prologue for what we're enjoying here right now, which is all of that scar tissue that was developed. All of those feelings that were kind of unearthed back during that time has only made the sense of enjoyment we have so much more special on that. And I think that Eddie's absolutely right. Something else that I think he's right about too is I don't think there is any chance whatsoever that Georgia looks past TCU. I really don't. There's a phrase that Kirby likes to use, and I like this phrase because it does, I think, he doesn't say this because of what we say around here, but it fits in well with the kind of an ongoing conversation that we have because, a lot of times we'll end up talking about the point spread and the odds and what's the chance of this happening and how big of a favorite is Georgia and how much they're supposed to win by and this or that and, what happens when you see people kind of betting against Georgia. Just one of those things. People are just dying to know how a game's going to turn out, and so the trend sometimes on that will at least give you something to kind of chew on as you wait for that. But Kirby says it a lot. He said it today that probability is not necessarily reality. By the way, let's see if we can do this before we get ready to say goodbye here. How about this? Special guest going to join us here in a second. Probability, Kirby says, does not equal reality. That just because you're favored to win a game doesn't mean you're going to. Just because mathematically you're expected to, projected to, doesn't mean you're going to. And that's exactly right. And I think that Eddie is right to say this Georgia team's not going to look past anything right here. All right, so we've been doing Go for 2 in 22. I have no idea how much battery life we have left, so we may have to kind of wrap this up here pretty quick. But Jeff Centella is decked out in his California finest. I want to go back to the phones here before we get ready to wrap things up. But, Jeff, you're fresh here after having been at San Antonio. You can definitely feel, Georgia fans kind of getting settled in here. The takeover of Southern California, I would say, is on.
I had somebody in the elevator, Brandon, say to me, "Go Hogs, go Frogs," and I'm like, "Was that a TCU fan?" Because I had a Dog Nation apparel license gear. You find it in Brandon's closet or whatever earlier, and I changed, but they looked at me and they're like, "Go Frogs," and I'm like, "What are they trying to be funny?"
I got to Go Frogs last night on Hollywood. That's the only TCU fan I've seen here thus far. So it's been a lot of Georgia fans all over the place.
I mean, Brandon, I don't know if you've seen this yet. Have you seen the trailer that Georgia football put out? Guys, go to Twitter. Look to the Georgia football account. The Game 15 trailer is narrated by Vince Dooley. They put together some old clips from old coaches show.
Wow.
And one of the closing moments of the video is they strung the words together. I don't know how they did it, but it's sure wish I could have been there with you to see you go 15-0 or win every game and win the last game and win the national championship. I don't know how that happened.
Wow.
But it is very, very, very cool.
I'll have to check that out. Mac 47, you're next here on Go for 2 in 22. Mac, thanks for being here. How about them Dogs? How you feeling? Mac, you're live. Go ahead.
Not me.
Matt, can you hear us?
I didn't call. No.
You didn't call? Well, we're glad to talk to you right now. All right, well, we'll let you go then. Thanks for being here. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Matt.
So anyway, enjoy the game. Mac, we appreciate you being here, and hope everybody's having a good time. And if you want to squeeze it, we've got like a minute or two left. We got to get ready to bounce out of here after that. So if you want to get in, I don't know if we called Mac. He said that he didn't call us. I don't know if we called him, but either way, whether we call you or you call us, if you want to be a part of this conversation, we've got about a minute or so left before we get ready to wrap up and let y'all get going on your Sunday night here. Jeff, what else is on your mind, and how much fun are you having with this? I know you've only just gotten here, and I know you're very, very sleepy. You've obviously been working a lot in San Antonio, but I can tell for me, there's a huge difference in what it feels like right now compared to yesterday. You still kind of had that early pregame situation where you've seen some fans, but as I've been through the hotel lobby today, I haven't actually left the hotel today, but as I've been in this hotel lobby, you see a much larger game day presence. And I'm assuming if we get a chance to be out and about, in the city tonight, you're going to see that even more. Dog fans are really starting to show up in big numbers.
So media members were telling me about the Atlanta airport today, Brandon. They said people were pulling 6 and 7 fingers at a time in the Sky Club or whatever, getting on the plane, and then they were imbibing on the way down the plane. And, for me, you just look around, and, Brendan, I think folks go to DawgNation.com right now, that countdown clock, Brendan, I think we're literally 24 hours away from kickoff.
Love it.
That gets the blood boiling a little bit, doesn't it?
It does indeed. What we're hearing from a lot of people is kind of a similar theme of, hey, the best path for Georgia is to actually look like Georgia on Monday. Come out and, give me both lines of scrimmage. Give me the running game. Give me a return to defense here. The more you allow TCU to hang around, the more that nutty bunch starts to think they can believe that hypno-toad thing they're so crazy about that you let this thing kind of fester for a minute, the hypno-toad sort of shows up. So go ahead and stomp that thing out right there before it gets started. That seems to be the conventional wisdom of the Dog Nation commentariat tonight. Would you join in saying that?
Yeah, I think everybody's a little worried that it kind of feels a little I still think that's that inner Munsonism in a lot of people, Brandon, where they're like, this is a different Georgia. This is a different program. I think they're on a new altitude. But they wonder, about that snake bit feeling or whatever. But, one of the things I was doing a lot of pregame research this week in idle hours between Florida and San Antonio and Arizona, wherever. And Brandon, Georgia has a chance. I don't think Nick Saban ever had a 15-0 perfect team ever. And I don't think any SEC team has ever won 29 games in 2 years.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for history, if you're looking for what's on the line, if you want to look to a new directory, a new launch point for Georgia football, it's all on the line tomorrow.
It is indeed. So we've got great coverage for you all day tomorrow. Jeff is here. Going to be down in the field. You get sights and sounds from him there on that. DawgNation.com, Connor Riley, Mike Griffith. They've got some great stories going to be writing for you. I'm going to be on video morning, afternoon, night. We may watch the sun come up in L.A. tomorrow if Georgia wins this thing again. And we're just going to keep a good thought. Yeah, there's reason to be confident. Yeah, there's reason to be excited. There's also reason to just let it play out for 60 more minutes. This team is 4 quarters away, 60 minutes of football away from, as we said, go for 2 in 22. We started it. It was a little bit of a fire back at those who said it couldn't be done, of all those people who thought teams like Alabama and Ohio State were better than Georgia at the beginning of the year. But all of a sudden now, it's just the next thing to happen. National championship number 2, folks saying go Dogs here in the hotel. We've gotten a lot of that. So we're actually kind of standing around the hotel. People have been coming out in the balcony shouting at us and saying go Dogs and doing all that kind of stuff. So that's all been really fun. Georgia fans having a good time wherever you are. I hope you're having a good time. Stay close to Dog Nation throughout the next 24, 48, 72 hours as we give you the lead up and then the aftermath of national championship, we hope number 2 for Kirby Smart and these Dogs tomorrow. Thank you for being a part of this show. For those of you who called in, thanks for doing that. For those of you who've allowed us to be a part of this experience all season long, as we've said tonight, it's an awesome, awesome privilege. So enjoy yourself. Get ready for it. Game face is on for tomorrow. We're playing for a national championship around Dog Nation. Have a good night, everybody.
Dog Nation's postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners, including Kroger. Visit Kroger for all your holiday needs and to stock up for bowl season. R.S. Andrews, DawgNation's choice for all your heating and air needs. Visit rsandrews.com to see how they can make you smile today. Marlowe's Tavern. Need a tasty gift this holiday season? Try a Marlowe's Tavern gift card. Visit marlowestavern.com. Georgia Farm Bureau. With local agents all across the state of Georgia, Georgia Farm Bureau is the home team. Find your agent today at gfbinsurance.com. Discover Dunwoody. Stay at one of our 9 hotels and enjoy easy access to 2 MARTA stations, which is just a short ride to downtown. Visit discoverdunwoody.com/DawgNation to book your stay today. Royal Caribbean. Reserve your cabin on the 2nd annual cruise with DawgNation in April. Visit royaldogs.com to reserve your cabin today. The Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys. Because Atlanta happens from out of nowhere. When the unexpected happens to you, visit atlantahappens.com. The 7-6 Apparel Company. The perfect holiday gifts for the hard-to-find person in your family. Visit the76.com to start shopping today. And Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Georgia. The best time for new beginnings is now. Forever moving you. Visit bhhsgeorgia.com to start your search today.